up tonight. Thought that I would talk a little bit about my 3 books that I've done on history. They are Images of America, Robeson County and Vintage Postcards, and then Lumberton, North Carolina. A little bit about me. If you haven't been following me, I am a local historian. I have been doing history research since probably I was 12 years old when I got interested in history and genealogy. I wrote my first book, the Images of America, Robeson County. The publishers contacted me and wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing a pictorial history of Robeson County. And I said, yeah, sure. So at that time, I was the director of the Maxton Historical Society. So I thought, well, if I'm doing this, and I was working on my history degree at UNC Pembroke, so I thought, well, I wonder if I could use this as an independent study. So I approached my advisor, Steve Berry, and I said, look, I'm going to do this book on Robeson County. You think I could do an independent study? He said, well, write it up and we'll see. So I wrote it up, and the history chair was not very enthusiastic, to say the least. He said that he really didn't think that I should be doing a book and that I'd be making money off the royalties and I might get credit for it and everything. So my response was, well, you get time away from classes to do your research that you use to write books. So I said, aren't you supposed to be teaching us how to be historians? And that part of it. So we came to the conclusion that, yes, I could do it. So my second year of my history degree, I started the book, and I started gathering photographs. I talked to different organizations, and I talked to people, and the newspaper did some articles on me. So I literally got to the point where I was going around to people's houses with my computer and my scanner and scanning their photographs, because I found that lots of people don't want to let go of their pictures, but they're more than willing to let you use them if they don't have to leave their site. So I took my laptop and my scanner, and I went all over the county scanning photographs. Had a lot of trouble with people thinking that they had anything important enough to include. Lots of people say, oh, well, I've got old pictures, but, it's nothing important. They're not part of the county's history. And what I try to do, and I did when I was at Maxton, at their historical society, and when I was at the Robeson County History Museum, to tell everybody that everybody in the county is part of the county's history. You are part of the big quilt of our county history. So everything is important. Everybody has a story. And, I found some interesting photographs while I was doing the work. It's just, everybody needs to record their stories. They need to record their family stories, write down the things that you remember that your grandparents told you, and preserve that for the future. So I'm going to just pick out a few pictures that I particularly enjoyed in the book. Lots of us have old family photos that we have no idea who they are. This one particular family that I found, they had almost all their pictures were identified. So they had this one huge family photograph. And the numbers weren't on there originally. We did the numbers just to correspond with the things. But this was an 80th birthday of Gilbert Gilchrist McPherson, who was a distant cousin of mine, in 1904. But the family had made sure that they could identify everybody that was in the picture, which is almost unheard of, to even find a picture of 4 or 5 people that everybody's identified, let alone one this large. And then I didn't do just all photographs. I did some documents. I did other things. The building that is currently Tarpackers in St. Paul's, it started off as the post office, as the bank, that later was the post office. And there were lots of photographs of it. But what I decided was Sarah Linda had an old bank statement from the bank, and it had a drawing of the bank, which I liked. So I decided instead of the photograph to go with the drawing, which I thought was real interesting, their interpretation of the cars on the streets and things like that. When you log in, if you log in, comment down below that so you can tell me that you're here. Also tell me if you've gotten any of my books. Also, doing history so early, I had lots of photographs that I had collected over the years. Like this one, which is in a school class in Fairmont. And actually, I found that in a person's barn. They had moved a bunch of stuff out of the house, and it was in the box in the barn that I rescued. Also, you find lots of interesting things that you think you know about a building that isn't necessarily true. So lots of people have probably seen the Flora McDonald building, which is now Highland Academy, but started off as Flora McDonald College, then was Bardell Hall, and then later Flora McDonald Academy. But the postcard I found was without the dome, which, it's always known for the dome. This picture, there you go. The picture at the bottom shows the, a little bit of problem with the camera. There you go. The picture on the bottom shows the dome, and I just always assumed that dome was there, but it wasn't. It wasn't put on until like 1919 that the dome was there. The same thing if you know about the town hall in Maxton, which was the Flatiron Building that's modeled after the Flatiron Building in New York. And one of the main things on it is this beautiful clock tower. And originally when the building was built, the clock tower wasn't there. The citizens of the town actually raised the money to put the clock tower on there. Here's another document. This was one that was from 1909, and it says, take notice, a call for the Indians of Robinson and adjoining counties. The men, women, and children of Indian race are specifically requested to assemble at the new college building. So this was, if you know anything about the history of UNC Pembroke, it started actually about a mile and a half from where it's at now. And in 1909 is when they started on the current campus. And there for a while, they were doing classes in both buildings. But this was the flyer that I found at the North Carolina State Archives from the very first open house at the new building. I also tried to get pictures of buildings and places that we would recognize, but maybe from a different view. So this was the 1908 courthouse, but it's taken from a side view. So this this is where later there was a little sandwich shop beside the courthouse, but at this time it was the Sinclair Gas Company. It was a gas station. But so we see lots of times the pictures of the courthouse straight on, but this one I thought was interesting because it showed this side view. Found these pictures at NC State Archives because I called the guy in charge of the photographs and told him, I said, I'm coming up, I want to spend the whole day in the photograph collection, gathering pictures from Robinson County. So he had just gotten these pictures donated to the archives. And it is a picture of Governor McLean sitting at his desk in the governor's office at the Capitol. And then Hector McLean, which most people will remember as the longtime president and CEO of Southern National Bank, his father's bank. But the interesting thing is, this was a staged pair of photographs by the newspaper in Raleigh. And I'm sure there's probably nobody on here old enough to remember when you picked up the telephone and you asked to speak to the operator answer. She was the one who connected you with your call, like we've seen on things like Little House on the Prairie and things like that. But this was the first telephones installed in the governor's mansion that were direct dial. So you could actually pick it up, dial the phone number, and for the very first call, they staged Hector calling from the governor's mansion to his father down at the Capitol building. At I thought that was very interesting. Photographs. Also, I would have people call me and sort of get up with me and say, "Oh, I've got some pictures I want you to come look at." And so I had this woman from Fayetteville call me. She said, "I've got a World War II photograph of my brother that, it's really neat." And I thought, well, I don't really need any more World War II pictures, but I'm going to go because I'm a firm believer that when somebody offers you a photograph, they offer you an artifact, you always take it because you never know what else that they have in the background. So I went, she showed me the World War II picture, and it was interesting. But then she said, "Oh, well, here's a whole nother stack of pictures that you might be interested in." And they were wonderful photographs of the McNatts from Parkton, including this drawing of the founder of Parkton, who was James McNatt. And he had a huge hotel there, and was a big businessman, had turpentine steels that were burned when Sherman's troops came marching through. So as I was gathering up stuff for the Robeson County book, and I saw I had been buying up vintage postcards, I just got amazed with the number of photographs of postcards that were out there in Robeson County. I have found there are about 300 that I know of, and I'm sure that there are many, many more out there that I have not, of course, found. But lots of things. I find it interesting what they choose to put on postcards. You can understand street scenes and maybe some prominent houses or things like that. It's always interesting, I think, what they pick to put on there. But then also you can find out so much about things that you haven't even thought about. If you look at Elm Street as it is now, but to imagine what it was 100 years ago or 150 years ago, it's a much different place. So this postcard shows a scene in front of the courthouse. So this is where the courthouse would be. This building that we see over here, that was a hardware store for years. It started off as a bank. Now that's where Woodbury Bowen's law offices are. But right across from there, on the next corner, is a tent. And I thought, well, that's unusual. There's this tent set up in down here. So I did some research, and it was a tent store there. The man actually had a groceries business and was set up in the tent. And at night they would just tie things down and go. And then eventually he saved enough money to build the building that's there now. It's part of a law office now, but back when I was growing up in the 80s, it was the place that everybody wanted to go. It was the Brown House, which was a craft and hobby place. So you could go there and get your craft supplies, get your car models, things like that. So it was great business. You also get views that you don't expect. And this is a postcard. Probably all but about 10 or 15 of the postcards that are in this book are ones that I have bought, mainly off of eBay. But this one is of downtown St. Paul's, and I just think it's it's a bird's eye view taken from Blue and 2nd Streets, and it just shows just this wonderful aerial view. This building here, this is the back of Tar Packers. This building here is the old hotel that was in town. And it used to sit where Tar Packers was, up on Main Street. And when they got ready to build Tar Packers, they just moved the hotel back to the back of that block, continued to operate it. And interesting thing, when Mr. Grantham came, who owned Grantham's drugstore, which later became Brisson's Drugs, when he came in about 1910 to St. Paul's to try and find a location to put in his drugstore, they were having a convention in town, and the hotel was full. So his daughter told me that he actually spent the night sleeping in the boiler room at the cotton mill. and the Karen Cotton Mill, which later became Burlington Industries. Also, you find things. Lots of people probably remember tourist homes. Tourist homes were sort of the forerunner of what we think of as bed and breakfast, but they were almost every town had one or two in town where tourists would stop and spend a night or two, and then go back on their way. But I found these two postcards. One with a smaller house that said Bernie Tourist Home. And then another one a few years later that said Bernie's Tourist Home. Well, I did some research, and the Bernies were large builders in Lumberton. They built lots of the major homes in the early 1900s, and the stores in town, store buildings. And one of their granddaughters did a book on them and their building. So I got to researching what she had written, and actually it is the same house. The first house that they had was the little Cape Cod style house, the little bungalow type house. And his wife started doing taking in tourists, and soon they were running out of room. So he actually built around it. So if you look at this bottom photograph, the top photograph is actually inside. So he just encased the current house around the original house, which I thought was interesting. Also, when you look at postcards, you have to realize that even though it's a picture postcard, they do things and they change things. So this one is in Maxton. Unfortunately, it's burned now, but this was the old McLeod house. But to look at it, you'd think, oh, well, that can't be it, even though the postcard says that, because everything's missing around it. But what they did was they went in and airbrushed out all the homes that were in the background and everything, so it just stood out. Another one that tells an unusual story from two postcards is the grade school, the old grade school building that they tore down in the 1930s in Lumberton. But before then, it was Robinson Institute, which was a private school. So the picture on the top here shows the Robinson Institute. It's just a nice square brick building. Well, the building on the bottom, there again, you would not know that that is the same building because the style is completely different. They built the wings on, but they changed the whole front of the building, adding the columns, adding a dome to the top. And that building served until the late 30s, I think, late 1930s, maybe the early 1940s. My grandmother was in the 3rd grade when they tore that down. And the interesting thing is when they tore it down, they needed somewhere for the kids to go to school, of course, but what they did was they put them down at what now is the Bill Sapp Center, which at that time was the Armory. And her class was actually on the stage of the Armory. So for the better part of the year, that's where the kids were at for the thing. Another thing, like I said, is it amazes me some of the things that they make postcards of, and sort of makes you wonder, why did they choose that? This probably is one of those pictures. This is the Southern Railroad going from into Lumberton from the Wilmington side. So this is like out through the swamps outside of Lumberton, which I thought was an interesting postcard, and I thought, that was an interesting choice. And how many did they honestly think they were going to sell of that? Sort of been like the power plant, which I guess, if you worked at the power plant, maybe you would think that was interesting, but it sort of makes you wonder how many postcards they sold of the swamps with railroad tracks going through them, and also power plant. I've got another one that is the men's dormitory at one of the cotton mills. And I thought that was also a very interesting choice because, you know, I would think the only people who might be interested in that there again are people who actually live in those dormitories. But then again, they aren't earning a lot of money, so you wouldn't think that they would be out buying postcards of regular living. But my research has led me to find, you know, things that we didn't know of. So the second courthouse in Robinson County was torn down to build the one that most people remember in 1908. This was the second postcard courthouse. And this was the only image that I had ever been able to find. It's the only one that they show in all the newspaper histories about the county, is this one postcard. Well, in my research, I found somebody who actually does nothing but collects postcards of post office, of courthouses. And he has the largest collection of courthouse postcards, but probably one of the most complete. He just has them from all over the country. And he had a really, really good website where you could actually click on your state, then down to your county, and then see your courthouses. Well, he had one that showed a different view of the courthouse. And it's here. And it's actually, you get close enough, it's actually a snow photograph, and it actually shows people, you know, walking through the snow up to the courthouse. So I thought that was an interesting view of the courthouse, but then also, you know, the only picture postcard we have of the courthouse. There again, like I said before, you can always find pieces of history everywhere you look. So this I've always thought was interesting. And this is Sheriff Malcolm McLeod. I was sheriff for many, many years. And this is a composite picture that was run in the state magazine on the 4th anniversary of his being elected sheriff of Robinson County. His father had been a Lumberton police chief, but he was elected to sheriff in November of 1950 and held the position for 28 years. During his tenure, the department enlarged from 13 deputies to 46 and modernized all the police vehicles and radios. But the thing that he was known for, especially those first years that he was in office, is he was known as the steel buster. And during his first 4 years in office, so that would have been 50 through 54, he busted 2,967 steals, destroyed over 6,800 gallons of liquor and over 690,000 gallons of mash, and arrested 521 men in connection with the steel operations, which I just thought, you know, it's just fascinating that if he managed to bust 2,900 steals in 4 years, how many more there must have been? Yeah, and I've heard, yeah, I found a newspaper article just the other day. You know, I've read about them being in barns and chicken coops. Matter of fact, my family was in an underground room in the barn. But one the other day, I've seen one that was actually in an outhouse. I don't know about outhouse, but this one the other day, they actually they were running the steel in the main house, and, which I thought was interesting. I also heard a rumor that there was one on the Lumber River that was actually on a metal-clad raft, and they would just raft up and down the river to get away from the police, the law and everything, and to go into the little coves along the river. Another thing about Sheriff McLeod, he was also sheriff when the Lumbees ran the Klan out of Robinson County. And, any of you are local, the Native Visions magazine that James Locklear does from Pembroke is out this month, and it's all about that big Klan rally. Lots of pictures were local pictures, and this is, I'm looking in Lumberton book right now, but a lot of pictures were local pictures, but then there are a lot of things that I got from the state archives, from the photograph collections at Duke or at UNC libraries, but then some things I got from the Library of Congress. And this was interesting. This picture here is the cotton mill in Lumberton, and this little girl right here is Flossie Britt. So I wanted to do some research since we knew who she was, and the whole thing with these photographs of cotton mills was Lewis Hines was hired by a group that was worried about children working in plants and things like that. He was to go around and document the conditions for these kids in plants all across the country, and he's taken just hundreds and hundreds of photographs. But this one, he stated about this one back in that Lumberton cotton mill. He said, "I saw all the children in this photograph coming out and going to work when the whistle blew." He said, "The girl with her arms crossed in the center is 6-year-old Flossie Britt, who has been working several months steady as a spinner for 30 cents a day," which I think probably is the equivalent to like maybe under $5 a day now, if you take it to modern currency. But she actually made the final report to the U.S. Labor Board about child conditions for children working in plants. So I've tried to track down her family. She moved from here. Of course, she's passed away now, but I'm still trying to track down her family because I think it would be interesting to find out, what about her life after that. She and her brother also worked in the cotton mill at the same time as a child. Their father had been injured and wasn't able to work anymore, so they had to pick up the mantle and go to work to support their families. And and I always, of course, growing up in Robertson County and it being a big ag county, I've always thought about the kids working on the farms and things like that. Lots of times people say, that's why you had big families, is so you had all these people to work on the farms. But I had never really thought about kids in this area working in plants. I knew that they did that north, but it just never occurred to me until I found these little same photographs that they were actually doing it here. And then I found some great aerial photographs. So this one I got from the Robertson County Library, and it hangs in the Robertson County Library. But it's really interesting view of downtown. So it covers all the way from the courthouse is all the way over on this edge, all the way back to the railroads and the tobacco warehouses. So it just gives you a great view of what was there in 1945 versus all the things that had been demolished since then. It was real interesting. This is the museum building here, and it shows the artesian well here. And then across the street was the train depot, which later was McLean Wholesale. But then behind there, you see an area, all those little houses, that's actually called the Bottoms, and one because that's where it floods out. But none of those houses exist anymore. All that's been torn down years ago. Another thing that I found is documentation of all the wonderful homes that we've lost, not only just in Lumberton, all across the county, but these are just some of the beautiful homes that have been demolished, sometimes by families, sometimes by people who bought them and tore them down. But you have houses on Elm Street like the Thomas Norman house, which his family tore down to build the Norman Apartments that's there on Elm Street. You've got this house, which was the McLeod house, and then later the Johnson house, but that's where the Lumberton Chamber of Commerce is. So they tore that down to build those buildings. And then we do have some wonderful houses that have been saved, like this is Humphrey William Smith house, the Williams house up here on the other corner. There you go. Still trying to learn what this camera exactly is, but that's the Norman house that's over near the Caldwell house, over by the river. And then, you know, there were photography studios in Robeson County. We had a long history of them. But there were also photographers who traveled around the country taking photographs, and you would actually pay your money. They'd come and you pay your money, and they would send you your photographs in several weeks. Well, this one is of my family, and the older woman holding the Bible is my fourth great grandmother, and those at the very back are my great great grandparents. But the woman that's all the way over on the side over here, I could not figure out who she was. I could identify everybody else in the picture, but her age didn't work out for anybody who was supposed to be in the family. And so finally I asked my great aunt about it, and she was like, oh yeah, said she was the neighbor. Her parents refused to pay to have their photograph taken, and she asked if she could come over and be in our family's photograph so that she could get a copy of the picture so that she could actually have a photograph. So that's just a little bit about the books that I've done. In the comments, leave below if you've got a copy of my books. And if so, what were your favorite pictures or items in the book? Also, I've got copies of the Loverton book and the postcard book for sale. I don't have any right now of the first book, the Robeson County book, but if you will get on my page, which is, you can search on Facebook, Blake Tyner Historian, or either on my website, blaketyner.com, and message me. I can see about getting you a book. You can find them other places. Sometimes Walgreens has them. You can also you can get them on eBay. There are lots of them on eBay. The thing about buying them from me is I can personalize them to you or to somebody as a gift. The holidays are coming up. You know, you've got St. Patrick's Day, which is a great day to give books. So if you want a book and give it to somebody for St. Patrick's Day, that would be a great gift for somebody who loves history, somebody who loves local history. So I'm also posting, I'm trying to post daily this month. I posted every day last month for African American History Month on my page. I'm trying to post every day on the on Women's History, which is the month of March. So be on the lookout for interesting articles on women who have Robeson County connections. So I hope you've enjoyed our little talk tonight. I'm also live streaming through this free software that's supposed to be able to live stream on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time, so that it's in both places. I'm interested because when I streamed Friday night from out at the farm, the video was very choppy. I don't know if it was choppy when it was going out live. The recorded copy was sort of choppy. And I wonder, because we are so far back off the road and sometimes the internet isn't very good out there, if it was choppy because of my phone or because of the internet connection. So I'm interested to see how this did tonight. If it didn't turn out good, then we might just have to get back to just live streaming on Facebook, and then I can just post it to YouTube. So, but hope you have a great night. And if you would, go out and look for those pieces of lost history, record those stories that you remember hearing as a child, and gather your old photographs and things like that. If you have interesting photographs and interesting stories, I'd be glad to hear them. Just send me a message. And have a great evening. Bye.